Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Facade Focus podcast, where I aim to connect the global facade industry by sharing knowledge and experience for others to learn from. Over the coming weeks, I'll be interviewing leaders and industry experts across the globe to discuss common problems people are facing and explore the innovative solutions that will help you in your learning journey. Now, this week I'm joined by Ilja Aljoskin, founder of LUHA Build and a true connector in the North American facade world. With over 12 years of experience across terracotta, stone and metal systems, Ilya's journey spans project management, regional leadership, and now growing a facade business built on trust, speed, and collaboration. At LUHA Build, he's rethinking what it means to support installers, delivering not just materials, but full systems, drawings, and a real partner mindset from design through to delivery. In this conversation, Ilya shines a light on how better communication across architects, GCs, and suppliers can unlock smarter bids, reduce risk, and keep premium facade design intact. He shares practical ways teams can work together earlier, communicate more clearly, and ultimately deliver better buildings without adding complexity. If you're passionate about great design, smoother procurement, and elevating how our industry collaborates, this one's for you. Ilya is also very active on LinkedIn. He produces some really educational, valuable content, so go and give him a follow. Now, a quick shout out to our sponsors of the podcast, which is Architectural Glass and Aluminum, otherwise known as AGA. They're a leader in custom curtain wall systems and have been providing tailored glazing solutions for over 55 years. More impressively, they're one of the largest employee-owned businesses in the glazing industry across the US and have a phenomenal team that buys into their ethos of collaboration and craftsmanship. I'm delighted to have them as a partner of the pod, so a big shout out to the team over there. In the meantime, let's get into this week's episode of the Facade Focus podcast with Ilja Aljoskin. Ilja Aljoskin, welcome to the Facade Focus podcast. Good to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, Tone. It's a pleasure to be here. A great honor to be on your podcast. I'm really glad you're doing it. You kind of stepped out of the comfort zone and started doing a podcast. Something that I've considered myself doing it, but you're doing it, so maybe it'll inspire me to do something as well.
Yeah. Well, I've given you a bit of an introduction already, but I'll open the floor up to you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what's led you to the current state of play.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, my background. So I am originally from Estonia, which is a country in Northeast Europe, part of the Baltic states. I grew up there until I was 14 years old. So really kind of was born in Soviet Union and grew up in this post-Soviet Estonia. And that kind of shaped my background. There was a lot of cultural influences from, being in Estonia, but being of Russian descent. And so I was just normal kid going to school there. And so as far as kind of story how we got to United States, my mom ended up remarrying when I was about 12 or 13, and it is a Dutch guy, and we ended up moving together. And so he was and still is in the construction industry. And so when I moved in with them, we started living together as a family. I was 14 years old. I was exposed to this facade industry through him because he was working for facade installation companies, suppliers. And in 2005, we eventually moved from Europe. We're living in Spain briefly and moved to the United States. And so I was kind of around that business. And when I was 19 years old, I started working as his assistant for a terracotta supplier company. And he was the West Coast sales manager, and I was his assistant. So my introduction to the facade industry was through terracotta rain screens. I learned about rain screen theory, learned how to do takeoffs. Back then we were doing it we didn't even have a plotter. We just had a letter A4 printer, and we're doing takeoffs of that before Bluebeam.
The original manual way.
Just count the pieces, count height and width.
Yeah.
But it was good times, and I learned how to speak with architects a little bit back then. And I worked with my stepdad for about a year, and then I went off to finish college and work some other jobs. And my junior year in college, I was studying accounting and business, and I went to go work for a stone contractor in California, Cleveland Marble, and started part-time as a project engineer, and did that until I finished college. And I really knew I didn't want to be an accountant because I don't have the personality to sit at a desk and
Yeah, I can't see you as an accountant, Ilya.
And what attracted me to construction is that it's a dynamic industry. Every day is something different. Every day you
Yeah.
have new challenges, and very difficult, but also very rewarding and challenging.
Yeah.
And so I ended up staying with that company and worked for 5.5 years and growing from project engineer to project manager. And then I moved to Northern California and kind of headed their Northern California operations there. We had an office and doing projects up there, and a lot of rain screen, natural stone terracotta projects. And
that was still on the sales side of it.
well, actually I was doing estimating and project management. Actually everything. I mean, really all the way, from the bid coming in, sales, estimating takeoffs, then selling the job, then managing the job all the way through the end.
Real seller doer.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because we couldn't in companies where estimating department is separate from project management, you have situations where, well, the estimator promised something and the project manager now has to either contend with it or change the kind of the story about it. But when you're the salesperson and the project manager, you don't have that luxury. So you really are kind of responsible for the whole process.
Yeah.
And then I decided to get out of California just for the cost of living. I really enjoyed working for the company I was with, but
how many years ago was that you left California?
2000, I want to 17, 18, something like that.
Yeah.
About
So
6,
you've
7
been
years
sort of 7 or 8 years. You've been where you
in
are
Minnesota.
now. Wow.
Yeah. So we decided to move to Minnesota, just the cost of living, and that entailed a change in a job as well. And then I worked for MG McGrath as project manager and then senior project manager. And I'm really grateful because they really trusted me with the craziest architecture projects. And when I say crazy, it just means twisting geometries, stuff that's never been done before. So it was challenging, really challenging, but it made me grow as a person. And I also realized, after these projects, I really can do anything, can learn anything and succeed. And throughout this whole process, I'm an employee and I'm working for these companies, but in the back of my head, there's a voice that says, you should try something on your own. You should try something on your own. And that voice kind of got louder and louder. And, I had
where do you think that came from?
I don't know. Maybe looking at my stepdad, because after he was kind of working as an employee for selling terracotta, he ended up starting his own company. But I think I don't know, just like entrepreneurial spirit. I think I've always kind of had it. Going back to, late teenage years, you're thinking about owning a coffee shop or a motorcycle shop or
yeah. You got that passion to build, I imagine.
Yeah, so this voice got louder and louder to the point where, I was 30 years old, and I was at a point where at the time I got divorced and I didn't have kids. I was pretty much had a fresh start, and I said to myself, if I don't try right now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the comfort of a good position, which I had, it's very difficult to leave. But I did it, and it's been 3 years since, actually March 1st was 3 years since I left that job and fully dedicated to LUHA. And kind of the reason I wanted to start this type of company is because we saw kind of a need for companies that are suppliers, but also provide really good service. Because on the purchasing end, working for McGrath as a purchaser of materials, many times you sort of are sold the job and you're left hanging when there's issues.
Yeah.
Or emails take a week to answer. And when you're in construction, you can't afford that. You need answers ASAP. And so we kind of committed, we're going to service our installer clients like this, that, you know, if they have an issue on site, we got to drop everything. We got to drop the bids.
Yeah.
We got to go help them. And that kind of stemmed from doing that. And of course, watching my stepdad do his own business. So I understood the business model. The distributor, you know, purchase materials, buy it as a, sell it as a complete system together with design engineering. That's kind of how we packaged it. And it came out to design supply support is kind of the business model for LUHA.
Supply support, nice. So who, just for people across the world who aren't familiar with LUHA, you've given us a bit of an idea of where you sit in the ecosystem. What type of companies are you working with? Do you partner with? You know, what's your ideal client profile look like?
Yeah, so there's kind of two paths in the promotion of the materials. So our primary clients would be installation contractors that actually put the panels up on the wall. So we sell the panels and the system to them, and we do the drawings, engineering as part of that package. So they're the actual purchaser. On the rare occasion, other suppliers will purchase materials from us, and GCs sometimes will purchase materials directly from us. But in general, it's subcontractors or installation contractors that are our main clients. However, because of we want to be specified on projects, we have to spend a considerable amount of time promoting to architecture community. So we really spend a lot of time with architects working in early design, and that's probably going to feed into our further conversation. Is that getting, you know, really my personal passion? Like, I love business development, but I love working with architects early on because they have these ideas, and we can be there to help these ideas come to fruition.
Turn them into real life.
Yeah, and within budget, constructible, because we have background, not only myself, but half of our team comes from installation background, working for installers and fabricators, and we understand what's needed to turn this project to reality. Can it be fabricated? Can it be installed? And this is kind of the strength, is that we have this background, we can bring that. And I really love doing that with architects. You know, doing the design charrettes in our office, looking at samples and saying, we could do this, we could do that. That's really where I love kind of living in this world. But so to wrap it up, the question is that we promote to architects and try to get specified, but we sell directly to mostly installation contractors.
Great. Well, I've got a bunch of questions that I want to dive into, but I'm going to leave them for what we're going to talk about now instead. So yeah, in traditional fashion, Facade Focus fashion, we're going to go into problem, solution, outcome. So a problem that you either feel is common, or a problem that you see happening that you solve, and then what positive impact that actually has on the industry, it has on the project itself, maybe the stakeholders. So give us a bit of a flavor on what's on your mind in terms of, talk to us about the problem first.
Construction industry is difficult and has many problems.
There's an understatement.
That's why we like it, I guess. We're gluttons for punishment in that sense. But a big problem that we see is that construction has many parties, and I kind of experienced that when we bring in a person to work in a company who has no construction background, and they ask, well, how does this all work? So you go to they ask the same question: who's your main client? Installer. But what is install? Well, they work for the GC, and what is the GC? And you start drawing these circles on the board, and how you have all these interconnected parties. You have the owner, And then you have sometimes owner's rep, an architect, engineers, consultants, GCs, and subcontractors, suppliers. So it becomes a very kind of like a murder mystery chain of who is doing what. And then you say, well, how does it typically done? If it's design, bid, build, it's done like this. If it's design assist, it's done like this. And sometimes the GC and the architect team up as a design build team, and it starts to get very complicated. But the problem is that in majority of projects, and it is getting better, but the companies operate in silos. So you have the owner silo, you have the general contractor silo, the architect silo, and then you have the subs and manufacturers in their own silos. And there's just not enough conversation between the two to bring the project. And what ends up happening is that because everybody is operating in silos, there's a lot of inefficiency, miscommunication, miscoordination, and what it ties all into, that's increased costs, increased lead times, increased quality issues down the line that the owner ends up kind of contending with, because at the end of the day, they have to pay for everything. Or businesses themselves, creating a lot of heartaches for themselves. And so that's kind of a major issue we've identified. And even though we're kind of on the lower end of the chain of this whole structure that I kind of described, the only thing we can do is control ourselves and how we operate, and maybe possibly help that solution somehow.
So the what I'm hearing is communication, early stage communication, is an issue between all these parties that are operating in their own little area of the project, that are responsible for a certain scope, that may talk to this other type of company, but not that other type of company. And then the flow of information is sporadic and hard to pull out what you need from the right parties. Would that be fair?
Yes. And the documentation that comes out on projects, it also doesn't help the issue, because when we see projects that we're just bidding, let's say we didn't work with an architect ahead of time and we're just bidding a job that we've heard about, our best case scenario is maybe talking to our client, maybe talking to the general contractor, but really we get a week time to bid the job. Right? Hey, today is March 4th. By March 10th, we need a price, and we have all this documentation that we need to siphon through to figure out what the owner and the architect want. And if the documents are great, which some projects, they're amazing, everything is specified, everything is consistent, but a lot of times it's not great. And the spec says the color is red, the drawing says color is blue, and there's just inconsistency. There's not enough time to have these conversations. So what ends up happening, as a bidder, I have to say, well, I don't know which color they want, so I'm going to protect myself and up the price a little bit to really handle any possible colors out
just
there.
To cover yourself.
Yes. And you have to remember that we are the distributors and we're representing manufacturers. So we're here. And if everybody does, let's just say, adds 2% to their price because they really don't know, then there's markups as you go up the chain. So something that, let's say costs $10 ends up costing the owner $15, $20 by the time it gets to the owner, because there's many parties involved and everybody has to make money, so it's understandable. But the small ambiguity of $1 on the manufacturer's side ends up being, by the time it gets there, maybe $3, $4, $5 by the time it gets to the owner. So this is kind of how it's a small example of how this this silo operation, especially in the design, bid, build structure, how it works and what it means for the owners and developers.
So is there an issue with the accuracy of the data that you receive and other people receive, that means you can't put a traditionally accurate bid together in a week?
Sometimes yes. The like I said, the drawings, and I really try to be careful to complain about the architects' drawings, but they are getting in a lot of ways worse over time.
Right.
You know, when
The drawings themselves, or just the bit that you're receiving?
well, the drawings themselves, because we have to look at the drawings and we have to look at the specs, and architects are using a lot of boilerplate specs, which has stuff in it from previous projects, or every possible ASTM reference that's made for facades that's not really related to your section. So, if you see that you have to comply with 10 different ASTMs, and the way the contracts are written, everything is flowed down and everybody has to comply with all these things. And then the quality of drawings, like I said, I just bid a job that was really, really nice. It had 800 pages. It had 3D views of everything, and it was really nice to bid a job like that, because all the details were accounted for, and you could see how things work together. But a lot of times there's a Revit view that's cut in section and blown up, and like that's the detail. So you have a line for this is wall cladding, this is the wall. It's like no flashing details. Is there miters? Or just lack of details? And no dimensioning, no call outs. And we see a lot of that too as well. And when you bid, it's like, how are you supposed to provide an accurate bid within a week when you see drawings like this? So it's really difficult. Yeah.
What's so you get just pull your microphone out a little bit. I think it's just rubbing on your t-shirt. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that side. Yeah, a little bit more on the others. That's it. Yeah, that one. Perfect. Yeah, if you pull that, that's perfect. So you get, obviously sometimes, you've explained the details that you're getting in order to put a bid together within a week. How do you put a bid together when you're getting such little information? And then a follow-on question from that is, how is it even close to being accurate, and where do you go from there? So you submit your bid, you've kind of figured a way, over a week or so on how to get something out so that you're in the game. Yeah, how do you put that together, and then where does it go from there to make it more accurate?
Great question. When you start asking, how do you do it? When you first started in construction, they say, do your best and cock the rest.
Yeah.
So in estimating process, there's a little bit of that. You have to do your best with the information that you have. If you have time to ask questions, that's, the clarifying questions, that's really where a lot of the clarity comes. So, in a week's time, you might be able to ask a few questions from, it has to go up the chain of command. That's another, part of this conversation, that I'm a supplier, and I have a question about, let's say the specs say red color and the drawings say gray color. And I write an email to the next chain, which is the installation contractor. Hey, the color is conflicting, so do you know which color should be? The installer usually doesn't know, because they're not the ones creating specs. So they have to send the email to the GC, and the GC has to send the email to the architect. That chain, if everybody does their job, press forward on the email, that might take a day or two, but that's assuming that 4 people in that chain have actually
done what you've asked them to do.
Send the email, or somebody just got busy and they forgot to send the email. So I don't know if this
without being, this is obviously, I'm going to sound really stupid saying this, and I fully hold my hands up. This is probably a stupid comment, so just prepare yourself for this. Like if there is an issue on communication, on emails going up the chain, and you sort of holding on that person sent it to him or her, they've then sent that on, and you're kind of hoping it makes its way up. Could there not be something simple, just as like a comms tool, like a Slack channel that everyone has to go in?
Yeah,
could be a WhatsApp community. I know, WhatsApp. There's not everyone's on WhatsApp in the US, but could there not be a platform that just everyone's in, where you've got your channels, you've got your main channel of comms that goes in there, then you've got you and the GC, you've got you and the whoever. Like, is that? I'm sure there's hey, look, we've already got this, or we've tried this, but it seems to me like if we're relying on email chains going up through the different companies and you're kind of hoping that it gets sent with absolutely no idea if it's got there or not, like surely there's a precedent for a comms tool at the very basic level.
And I don't think I don't know if it'll work, and can guess why or explain why, but it's not a stupid suggestion. It's
Okay.
really the best way is if we have a relationship with an architect. Let's say we've worked with them or we have had communications before, and during bid time you send them a text message and say, hey, hey Tom, in the specs you say gray, in the drawings you say blue. What is it actually? And they respond and they say the proper answer. So you can take that information and go with a bid, and then you send the email through the proper chain of command, so it's documented via RFI, addendum, bulletin, whatever, pre-bid document or post-bid document. So I'm really a big fan of this direct communication with the stakeholders and then documenting it through the proper process.
Yeah.
The reason I think it's not a standard or something that's not being used because of liability, and everybody wants to really control this silo a little bit. And they want to kind of control the flow of communication, and especially becomes like this when the job becomes contracted. The general contractor wants to make sure all the communication goes to them, because if there's a change that has financial schedule implications that they weren't privy to, then it's a big mess. For example, I talked to an architect and he decided to change a color on me without this proper chain of command. Well, maybe that color is more, and I go to the client later on and say, well, the architect told me it's going to be red, which is more expensive. So, and there's no communication. So this is the reason why it's not like this. But I really wish it was, because honestly, like if we could, and it would be so much faster to bid jobs, to have this informal communication. And well, so this is going to be a plug for a friend of mine that started a company called Concert VDC.
Okay.
And it's a sort of a blockchain-based platform where the information is exchanged and all parties are part of this platform. So it doesn't really take the place of Procore or a software like this, but it really is there for exchange of information. So if I'm making if I'm submitting something, then other parties can also see that I've submitted and this item is sitting somewhere in the process.
So it's like source of truth for the project, essentially. Yes,
and then what you can do also is down the line you can compare documents and see if they match based on blockchain data. If it kind of made for fabrication a little bit down, but you can say, is this drawing the same as the drawing that I have on my computer? You compare them and it will tell you it's a match or not match. So that's one really cool part of it. But the other thing, it's kind of has communication, and then there's a kind of messaging and chat feature of the software that allows you to see, okay, this is what was said about. So it's a document keeping and communication keeping software, if you will, because emails
needs to be a blend. There needs to be a blend of email for, obviously keeping track and, a log of what's happened. But there needs to be a blend of being able to instant message at the same time so that you can get answers that you need that are more urgent, that you're not relying on 2 or 3 other stakeholders to pass on a message that may come back to you or may not. So Microsoft Teams needs to improve somehow.
Well, it's the information has to go up 3 or 4 inboxes and then down 3 or 4 inboxes, and I mean softwares are getting better to inform everybody, but there's nothing beats a phone call or sometimes a quick WhatsApp or a text message to solve an issue. So going back to your question, how we bid it is, we open the documents, we sift through everything. We kind of create, as soon as possible, a list of questions that we might have or not clear. We send that out because we only get a week of time. Meanwhile, we're getting the questions, we're starting a takeoff, and we're counting how many panels are in the project. There could be anywhere from 1 panel type to 10 different panel types. And we're using these drawings to do a takeoff. the drawings are great, it helps us. If the drawings are bad, it's really painful because you have to look at all the plans and sections and try to put this puzzle together. And that's another comment is like, I'm not sure if this is possible, but when architects issue models or drawings as part of the bidding process, in Revit, you can easily output the surface area of a certain panel type. And issuing that with a bid is extremely helpful, not to really rely on those quantities to bid necessarily, but I can at least think if I'm in the ballpark, or if I'm within, I usually say if I'm within 5% of somebody else's takeoff, we're good, because the rest is kind of just a margin of error. But, if I'm at 20,000 square feet and the architect says, well, it should be 12, then we say, hey, that's a pretty big change. Let's figure out what happened here. And I really wish that architects would issue those quantities as a standard procedure, as well as model, again, not for bidding, but at least for reference purposes, a 3D model that can be spun around and people can see where's the soffit, where's the return, where's the coping, what's on the backside of the parapet. There's a going joke in the facade industry, backside of parapets are always free because people miss them.
Yeah. So why is that the case? So why is that? We're talking about the solution here already, like, getting that model. Why does that not happen? And two, how can you make it happen? How can that be something that you ensure that you get every time?
What we can do on our behalf is request this information, whether we get it or not every time. That's yet to be seen, but all we can do is request. I've spoken with a few architects. Why is this not a standard process or procedure? It's about the liability. Is that sometimes the model has stuff that maybe is not part of the documents, and what they want to avoid is that somebody saw something in the model that they bidded based on and they didn't see it in the drawings. And in the language of hierarchy of these construction documents being unofficial, you have the specs and drawings, kind of 2D PDF items take precedence over anything else. And so we're sort of operating that we're in this amazing technologically advanced world where you can wear VR glasses and it will do a layout of framing for you, yet we bid off of archaic 2D documents that are contradicting themselves. So this fear of releasing a model with a bid is really, I think if they release it with a saying, hey, this is for reference only, the PDFs still take precedence, but you can use this model as you wish. You can take any dimensions you want. You can make any cuts through the building. You can spin it around however you want. You really can understand. I think I spent probably half a day when I receive a bid just trying to understand the geometry of the building. If there's no axon views provided with the bids, which most drawings do show axon views, but still, you're given maybe 3 axon views in the drawings of the building. You're like, well, I really want to see what's underneath there, or kind of spin it around. It really would just spinning that model for 15 minutes would just do the work of, day, half a day, depends on the project, but they can get really complex. And I really wish this was a standard practice in these 3D models, because most architects.
This episode is brought to you by Architectural Glass and Aluminum, otherwise known as AGA. Looking for a trusted glazing partner? AGA has been working alongside industry leaders for over 55 years, providing reliable and high-quality glazing solutions. Specializing in Class A office buildings, hospitals, airports, and higher education, AGA creates custom curtain wall systems tailored to your project needs. With a focus on collaboration and craftsmanship, AGA is here to support your next project. So visit aga-ca.com to learn more about their services and capabilities. That's aga-ca.com. Now back to this week's episode. What's the upside for the architect with this, though? Because in order for them to implement a process, that it's got to benefit, something along the lines, isn't it? They're not just going to implement it just because we said so. How could it be a benefit to them in the project? Make their
Well,
life easier?
yeah, I think generally the accuracy of the bids, right? The more information we have, the less ambiguity, the more aggressive we can be on bids, and more certain we can be in a bid when we provide our number. I always say ambiguity raises the price. The more we don't know, the higher the cost. So we can, for once, we can ensure that their vision stays reality, because VE is a word that everybody hates, and that's what happens, especially during budgeting phases. You issue drawings to get budgeted because there's multiple stages of bidding. We could be budgeting 3-4 times before it goes out for hard bid. And let's say they want terracotta on their building because they love the material, but because of let's say they issue 2D schematic design drawings that really have no details, it's kind of hard to see things. So people just throw a number at it based on previous experience, but it's usually a higher number than probably should be. And what ends up happening is that they get the budget and they say, wow, terracotta came out so high. And then the VE starts, because they bring this budget to the owner and they say, why'd you want terracotta? Can we just put metal panels or stucco or brick? And hence now they're losing something that they could have kept, where there was like clear communication. Or I mean, this is of course it's like almost like chicken or the egg, but if they would come to the teams, meaning the installers and the manufacturers and suppliers and people who are putting this together, and say, we have $100 a square foot for this wall, what can we afford with this? The nicest material, the highest performing, what can we afford with this? Do your best. And then we as a team with the installer can say, okay, my material is $30 a square foot, your installation is $60, and there's general conditions. What can we do? And we can come back and say, well, if you use a smaller size, if you use this color, if you change some things, you can get to $100 a square foot. Now they're getting the material that they want. Maybe the joints are moved, maybe it's not aligning perfectly with the windows or whatever, but at least they're getting a premium product versus having to VE down to stuff that you have to replace in 20 years.
So there is a clear pain point there, that they don't get the quality that they intended from the outset, and that directly relates to not giving enough quality data for you to bid on.
Yeah, and yes, and unfortunately, the facades, for whatever reason, is the first thing to get VE'd. It's not the mechanical system. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, people listening can correct me, but when it comes to going on a VE, it's like, all right, what do we have on the outside? Let's go with cheaper windows. Let's go with
So I wonder where that stems from. That's got to come from somewhere, isn't it? Where does that mentality come from? That's an interesting point.
Maybe it's the first thing you see, the first thing the owner sees.
Yeah, for me, that's the thing I'd want to keep. That's the first thing you see on my building. Like, I'm not skimping on that. That's what I'm going. I'm spending all my money on that. Like, yeah, probably why I'm recruiting to the facade industry and don't build in the facade industry. But no, there's obviously going to be almost like an education piece that to the architects that you've got to keep not hammering home, but keep saying to them, look, the more data, the better data that you can give me, the better bid I can give you, the higher quality material you can get, the better the product, the better the install, the better, it plays back into why they're on the project as well. They want to deliver a great project, whoever's on that.
Yeah. And I think, one of the ways, design assist projects tend to have a little bit more of that, because you have the installer and the manufacturer suppliers brought in 6 months, a year and a half earlier than the bid, and they say, okay, as a team, let's figure this out, and how can we get this material that's this performance of the wall. If we're talking about facade, now there's performance issues, there's fire code, thermal analysis, all that stuff. So let's figure all this out. How can we get all this within this budget? And every time we change something, we kind of check the budget. So I've been a part of several design assist projects where, this is really helpful. Again, a lot of owners don't opt for that method of project delivery, but that's really, really helpful in getting the architect what they want, the owner what they want, and high performance, and it's within budget, so there's no surprises. If you're a design assist partner and you've been part of the process for 6 months, 9 months, when the project goes out to formal bid, if you will, you cannot say, wow, I've never seen this before, or it's going to cost a lot more than you expected, because you've been part of it, and you cannot play dumb, so to say, in this scenario. And I understand that not a lot of projects have the time or the budgets to design assist, but we call them, a lot of time when we do presentations for architects, they say, do you do design assist? And so, well, we're happy to do a design assist. It doesn't have to be this formal 9 months process, but let's have a meeting. Let's have at least a conversation where we just sit down and say, what do you want? How can we get there? And bring everybody to the table. I mean, it doesn't have to be this contractual process. It could be as simple as 3 Zoom calls, 1 hour each, with the facade team to discuss how we could do it. I think even that would just do wonders for the end result on the project.
And why don't they do that? Is that, again, just come down to formal processing, liability? What?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I'm not privy to all the information why it's not been done as a formal process. But the other thing, just human factors, we're all busy. And architects are extremely busy, and we know how they operate in terms of like deadlines, is that they're always scrambling, and they really there's no time. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question, why we don't do it. But, this is the silly thing, Tom. We spend so much money and time trying to get one-on-one with architects. We go and do a lunch and learn for 20 people, and we buy lunches for everybody. It takes half a day of our time, maybe 2-3 hours the day before to prep, and come back to the office and just be spent. We just want to talk to an architect for an hour, have that one-on-one. We'll do it for free, I
was going to say, you need to start figuring out what these architects like and take them there. What one-on-one? There's the key to unlock the door. I'm telling you now. That one-on-one is so beneficial. Yeah, you need to figure out what these architects what they like to do.
Yeah, and everybody's spending this money just to get one-on-one, a little bit FaceTime with an architect, where we say, hey, we're sitting here available, and if we don't have to go and do a lunch for 20 people, and you can call us and say, hey, I'm thinking about this for the project, what do you think? It just starts like this, very informal, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and build those conversations. And we are getting better at it. We are developing more and more relationships where that's kind of the normal process, and it's beautiful.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Is that trust to give you a call and give you that 5 minutes comes with trust, doesn't it? Comes with that developing that relationship. Say, I can call Ilya and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about this, because they've already built up an idea in their mind as to what angle you might come at, what value you might be able to bring, which is why they're giving you the 5 minutes. So I think it's just developing. It all comes down to relationships and communications, though, right? But you've just got to
absolutely
keep developing relationships.
I think, as we think about just all the problems in our industry and just organizational issues, everything can be solved with communication and or money.
Yeah. But, and it seems like we're, to go back to your point about the not having enough time in the day as well. We must have we definitely do have the most amount of productivity tools and hacks available to us more than ever. And I would say we're probably more unproductive than we've ever been.
I would agree with that. And a huge thing that, for example, we're doing internally is the focus, because we have all these tools and bells and whistles in our phone and this, and the focus is gone, because it's so easy to, let's say, be focused on a specific task and then look at your phone for whatever reason, and you just lost that flow. a lot of productivity experts talk about this, entering to this flow. And because we
Flow
have,
state,
yeah, and it takes a long time, maybe half an hour to get into that state.
yeah,
And then it's so easily. So we've been, I've been personally implementing timers, just or hourglass, half an hour hourglass. I said, this hourglass, I'm not checking my email, not picking up the phone. And I think that's a main. And when we do that as a team, we also have specific, we'll call them focus times. Is like we work in an open office, and we don't we try not to speak to each other during those 2 hours. So this is focus time. Once this focus time ends, let's have collaboration time. But really just stop interrupting ourselves, not only with technology but ourselves. And I think this is what's causing this. Like we have all these tools. We have AI.
Yeah.
And we're less productive, which is a paradox.
Oh, it's wild. Yeah. I've gone down some deep rabbit holes with that. I'm coming back out of them now with some good, productivity tools that really leverage AI, that have reduced a lot of manual admin I was doing. And I did do some testing on it, on timings, and trying to figure out, like, is this even worth it? Because there's a cost and time element to it, isn't it? You can put a tool in place that does something for you, but if you're spending more time configuring it and actually in the tool, prepping it, doing it, taking reports out of it, trying to figure out what the report means versus just doing it manually yourself, it's pointless endeavor, isn't it? But I think it's just understanding where your time goes. If there's a repetitive manual task, automate it somehow. Just figure out how to automate that, and that doesn't have to be AI. That's just simple automation. But I think there's a lot coming down the pike about how we can implement AI to do some really cool stuff within the business that just gets the humans staying in the creative flow state. Spending more time there and less time, jiggling the mouse or tapping the keyboard, or get the designers get a pencil back in their hand, or do some creative stuff that just gets things flowing. Because it's crazy how you might spend a morning working and you've got a problem to solve. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself here, no one else. You got a problem to solve. You sat at your screen, blank, nothing, just nothing going in, nothing, the cogs aren't turning. And you try and sort of, noodle your way through a problem, and you kind of get towards the end. I need some space. I'll go for a walk for 20 minutes. Boom, idea. Boom, idea. Like, got it. Yeah, I'm here. Done. Like, solved immediately. Or I'll go and sit at the kitchen table, and just eat some food, have some lunch or whatever, and again, another idea. But just being able to separate yourself and actually stay in a thinking zone rather than just a doing and manual and repetitive stuff is so valuable. But you need to be aware of that to actually figure it out, don't you? So no, I think there's a lot to be said for that. So I think with a question I do want to ask you, just whilst we're in the solution side of it, if you could change anything about anything that we've spoken about, process-wise, if you could just implement something and it would be accepted on behalf of all the stakeholders of the project, whatever you want to implement now gets widely accepted, what would you change?
If there would be one thing to change, is just open communication with all parties involved, and forget about contracts, legal language. Now, especially in the United States, very litigious society in general, but also our industry, construction industry, very litigious. Forget about that, and let's just have conversations. And like I mentioned, as suppliers, installers, everybody's dying to get 5 minutes with their ideal client. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of my peers that if we get a call from the architect or the owner or the GC and ask for our opinion because they respect our opinion, we're more than happy to help. And I think that's a small start. How you change the overall process, I think there's something to think about. But once people see the benefit of a certain delivery method, and again, design assist, IPD, design build are kind of leaning towards that. But take away all the, paperwork, if you will, and just talk. And I think that in general we'll be better off, because like I said, communication is key in everything, even every relationship in our life.
Yeah, it is. And it's so easy not to do, isn't it? And you just, you make assumptions. You just assume that they're not getting back to you because they're thinking about this or thinking about that. And the reality of it is they're just busy. They've just got other things going on, and they've got, I mentioned it in a previous episode, like people have got lives. They've got their work lives. They've got, issues in their life. They're taking up all their brain space, and you've got one thing you need, and you're probably thinking like, they're ignoring me, or, it's whatever. It's just, they got other things going on as well.
Yes. And I think, the pandemic, being locked up and not communicating, and the generational gap also, I'm seeing younger generations, the phone is very heavy. They don't call. Nobody calls.
Yeah.
And 20 emails could be discussed in about 5-10 minutes on a
you're telling me. Yeah, I'm a notorious, anyone that's listening that tries to WhatsApp me, I'm a notorious terrible instant messenger. Like, just call me. If you call me, you'll reach me every time. And it's just like, I hate do you know what I hate about the instant messaging is that, like you just said there, the 20 emails, when you get a message thread on WhatsApp, like, you mention the question, but there's no tone. So like, they may answer it in like a different way that then brings up another question that you have to ask to kind of complement the first question. And, if you just picked up the phone and asked the first question, I'd have got an answer. And, we could just be talking about the weather now, or what did you get up to last weekend? But it suddenly turns into, and that exchange of like 4 or 5 messages, because you're going through your day, that could take 2.5 hours, because you get it when you're getting into the car, and then you drive somewhere, and then you stop, and then you send the next one, then you're going out, then you're picking the kids up from school, then you come 2.5 hours later, we've had a conversation that could have took 10 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, it kills me. And I know I'm terrible for it. I can hold my hands up. I think you've nailed the outcome as well there. Being able to change and have that open dialogue, and basically instant access to all the stakeholders on the project would clearly improve the project for everyone. You'd get higher quality materials, essentially a better end product for everyone. And I imagine projects would be delivered on time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as you're speaking about this, maybe I'm envisioning a bid platform. Let's say you have Building Connected, Construct Connect, all these bid platforms is where you have the formal documents saying this is the RFIs, this is the pre-bid documents. But then you have a little chat box where people could just type in their questions, just like a webinar. You have the formal questions asking, and you have people in the chat. Or maybe somebody doesn't like phone calls, maybe somebody doesn't like speaking with people, but they have the opportunity to just do the chat, something like this. And this chat can be a reference point. Again, it doesn't have to be a formal document, but it gets the answers quickly. I think something like this is definitely possible on a
if
mass
that
scale.
Chat was almost like an AI agent, it would learn over time as well. So it would almost build in itself its own frequently asked questions and just be able to answer them on the front end anyway. Then it's not, you don't even have to ask the question. It could build, hey, look, we keep getting asked these same questions, like see below for all the questions we get asked and all the answers you'll need.
That's the next episode. That's
maybe let's start with just improving communication first before.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's ideas, and there's smarter people than myself in the world that really can help this. But I think this pain needs to be heard, and I know that I'm not the only one experiencing this, and it would just make everything easier, faster, cheaper.
Yeah, I think it's a common problem. I just don't think anyone knows how to solve it with every stakeholder in mind and all their motives taken care of and into consideration, and workflow, how each stakeholder works on the project, and when someone's brought into the project, and when it's a busy time for a certain type of company versus a slow time. It's a complicated problem, but at the end of the day, it's human communication. So, I think there's a few factors there to consider. But no, that was brilliant. I think what you've raised will be relatable to a lot of people, not just across the US, but across the world. Communication is paramount to the success of any project, deal, whatever it is. And hopefully there's someone out there that knows how to implement an AI agent into one of these platforms to help you on your next project. But we'll fly into these quickfire questions that we ask on the podcast. First thing that comes to mind, I'll ask them, you answer, and we'll find out a little bit more about Ilya the person, not the professional.
All right.
So let's start with favorite food.
Favorite food, probably sushi and steak.
Nice. Which one? I've got to push you for one.
Steak.
Nice.
For one, porterhouse steak, medium rare.
You're gonna have to translate porterhouse into European metrics here.
It's got 2 cuts in it. I think it's ribeye and a T-bone in one. It's like a T.
Yeah.
It's got both.
Yeah. You're talking my language there. Yeah. I would go ribeye steak all day long.
Yeah.
Sports team you follow?
Arsenal Football Club.
That's unfortunate, but that's fine. Someone has to support them, and that's okay. So, favorite city and why is that your favorite city?
I'm going to go with Porto, Portugal. I visited the city when I was maybe 14, 15 years old. I just fell in love with the architecture, the quaint kind of feel of the city. It's not so polished as a lot of Western European cities. Yep. However, I haven't been there since this was 2003 maybe. I've heard it changed a lot. It's a lot of tourism, a lot of Airbnbs. It's cleaned up a lot, so it's lost a lot of its charm, I've heard.
Character,
Yeah,
that would be a shame. I've never been, but I hear the same thing. Even from people that I've visited recently, but maybe they didn't know the charm that it had back in the early 2000s. So, no, cool. It's definitely on my list one day. What's your favorite hobby? What do you like to do in your spare time?
I have too many hobbies.
Okay.
Too many hobbies. Creatively, it's playing guitar, photography. Actively, it's probably jiu-jitsu. So I don't have a favorite because I love doing it all. So
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'm just exploring jiu-jitsu. Not for me, for my son. I think I've had enough injuries on the sports field in my life that I think I would just fold in half walking into a jiu-jitsu class. But yeah, definitely looking into my son. When did you get into that? Was that something from an early age, or was that something you picked up?
No, I started when I was 30 years old. Yeah, and it is not a kind sport to the human body.
No, I can imagine. I spoke to a guy not too long ago, had a shoulder replacement just from doing jiu-jitsu. So it's kind of
they call it involuntary yoga. or murder yoga also.
Yeah, I'm going to use that. I'm going to coin that phrase. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice.